All right. Hello, everyone. I am Jacob Winograd. I'm the host of Biblical Anarchy, and you're here live with me in now a solo green room. This is my third show in a row tonight. I think I had like a 20-minute break between the first and the second one. No break between this one and the last one. I was just on in the green room with Fabian Liberty, Scott. That was a really cool conversation. That was we touched on a lot of things from immigration to just what libertarianism is and strategy, even a little bit of history there. So it was definitely a good conversation. If you missed it, I highly recommend going and watching it after you're done listening to me here. But this is, of course, the stream I marketed where I was going to do a sort of post debate mortem on the Dave Smith Liquid Zulu debate that I moderated last week. So I'll be getting into that momentarily. I'm going to say hi. Sorry I ran late, guys. It's just um, it was it's one of those conversations where like we just kept getting into like one of the problems of doing a podcast and doing a live stream is that on one hand you want to stick to a schedule, right? But the other hand, like you can always tell when a conversation kind of hits a point where like if you just stop it then you're kind of like stopping it abruptly and like I like to find the more natural ends to a conversation that's flowing that well. So uh see who's in the chat. Everyone, yeah, sorry again, I was running late. Yes, Muggsy. I am bricked up and ready to go. I am fueled by Diet Pepsi and Liquid Death tonight. So uh all right, hold on. Let me know if I got this right. AT Alien 715, time is relative anyways. Please let me know if I got that right, man, because I I think I said it like 5 different wrong ways on the last stream. $5 from Chuck and Money. Thank you very much. I think Dave needs to just be honest and stop helping push the train in the wrong direction. Zulu needs to not be as aggressive in the purity tests. Okay, that's I think I agree with part of that. So, all right, where do I want to start? I guess let me start by giving my general thoughts on the debate. And also, like, I think I gave some of this in my intro, but and I think I talked a little bit about this in the last stream with Fabian, but just to reiterate for you guys who are just tuning in, like, why did we do this debate? I think that the debate resolution itself was sort of just like I don't know, it was like a means to an end, right? It was a means to an end to kind of talk at the deeper issues. And the deeper issues that I think we're being plagued by as a movement are this sort of tension that I think that Dave and Zulu are both completely right in sort of like they're pointing to different problems. And I think that both problems exist. I think that we as a movement have a problem where like we can be rather toxic with our infighting and everyone kind of has there's different flavors to libertarianism. There's different philosophical camps and we spend a lot of time arguing amongst each other about who the real libertarians are. You know, like I do a podcast for the Libertarian Christian Institute. And like I obviously and I say this from time to time, like I think that the best grounding for libertarianism is Christianity. But the way I want to do that is by like demonstrating it and persuasion. What I don't want to do is like go to all the atheist and secular libertarians. Like I was just on a stream with Fabian and he's a one of those like anarcho objectivists who he said he like tried to be a Christian but he couldn't maintain it and he just found issues with it and couldn't maintain his faith and or find faith and like am I going to tell Fabian like, well, now you're an atheist and a secularist, and I don't think you have a solid foundation for any of your beliefs, so you're not a real libertarian. Now, like I could do that debate with him, right? I could have the debate and be like, uh, I think there are some philosophical grounding issues with grounding morality and objective truth in a materialist world or whatnot. But I think that's like a fun debate to have. I think it's a philosophical exercise that we should do. But like, if we do it to the end of like, you're not a real libertarian if you don't have my exact priors, that's not really helping the movement, I don't think. Uh, so I think Dave's, and then there's also this sort of problem in the movement where we treat libertarianism like it has to be the most fundamental part of a person's identity. It has to be like everyone's going to have different things that they value. And I know uh like there's this whole thing about it's the non-aggression principle, which means it should be a principle, which means it should be held all the time and it's not a preference and it's not a value. And that's what like the objectivist camp says. And like I hear that. But like on a human level, like we have values, right? Like, and I can acknowledge the non-aggression principle is a true and binding principle, but I might value my adherence to it less than I value being a father. Like I get more enjoyment. Like let me put this in objectivist terms. I get more from a point of rational self-interest, I get more fulfillment and purpose and joy and love and meaning from being a father than I do from my commitment to the non-aggression principle, right? So there's this so there's this long-standing problem of infighting the libertarian movement, impurity tests and gatekeeping in ways that aren't helpful, to the point where then even people will like uh seemingly market libertarianism in a way that I think sells it incorrectly. That sells it as like an anti-human, detached from reality, like endlessly like spiraling in philosophy debates, and almost like just like the archetype of like you know like nerdy neckbeards in their mom's basements who aren't successful, like all these things. And like it's not a good forward face for the movement. And so I think Dave is kind of pointing out that we need more than libertarianism, and that if you sell libertarianism and you demand that to be a libertarian means that you like hold libertarianism and libertarian philosophy with the same intensity that like your most radical libertarian theorist has, uh that's not like, even in a fully free society where everyone believes in that, not everyone's going to have that kind of commitment to the philosophy. uh so now I think on the other hand, I think what Zulu is pointing out is that if you're going to say that there are like things that we value beyond just adherence to the non-aggression principle, and if you say that there are times where our moral intuitions are going to run afield of the conclusions that the libertarian legal theory might lead us to, well, then how do you delineate those things in a way that doesn't just like open Pandora's box and now anything is permissible? Uh, and I'm like, I think these are both valid concerns, and like these are conversations that need to be had. Uh, but they just haven't been had in very productive ways for a long time. So to that end is why I thought that like despite like there was so much showmanship going into it, right? Like there was the 2 years ago, Dave calling the open borders libertarians worse than communists. Uh, and then there was shots fired in between then and now. Then there's the 3.5 hour video from Liquid Zulu. And like I was worried that the conversation was just going to like devolve into name calling and like full blood sports, which I didn't want. And there's problems with, maybe you could say, how the debate went. If you like, I know some of you weren't totally happy with it, which I'll get into my thoughts on that in a minute. But it could have gone so much worse, I think. And there were moments of genuine interaction and maybe like inroads being made between the different camps here to like try to I keep like I'm literally saying the same thing to both sides, right? Because a lot of my there's crossover with my smaller audience, and Dave's audience, where people are they think I'm wasting my time talking to the Zulu types, and then the Zulu types either think that I'm not a real libertarian, or they think I'm being too soft or charitable towards Dave. And I just keep telling both, hey guys, we have our disagreements, but we're on, like it or not, we're on the same team. We can pretend we're not on the same team, and we can fight, I mean, but at the end of the day, it's life has thrust us onto the football field together, and we're the 11-man crew that are out here right now having to move the ball downfield. And by the way, we're on our own 5-yard line. We're really behind the ball here, and we need to drive. So whatever, we can have our disagreements, but I just want us to have these conversations in a way where we're on the same team. I made this point earlier on Dan Smotz's show. That's just it's the same thing with Christians. It's kind of like looking at the world right now, and you're a Protestant or you're a Catholic, and you're rather than focusing on fighting the left and the rise of secularism, the most important thing I should do right now is make sure I tell Protestants they aren't real Christians, or tell Catholics they worship Mary and they aren't just things like that. That just, I think this isn't a philosophical argument, but it's just a observation about the moment we live in. But I see there's a couple of super chats, so let me take a break here and read some of them from Griff on Gaming 4474. Someone needs to fuse Thomistic natural law with Hoppian ANCAP theory. Yeah, I've often said we need more Catholic ANCAPs. I know they exist. We just don't have, here at LCI, we have an Eastern Orthodox, we have Reformed, we have Baptist, we have Lutheran. We have, well, not really. We don't really have Lutheran. We have someone who attends a Lutheran church, but they're not Lutheran. Uh, but we have Anabaptist, we have Church of Christ, but we don't have a Catholic. We've done some projects with some collabs with I'm forgetting his name, Ryan McMakin from the Mises Institute. He's a Catholic. We did a panel back in 2023 at Freedom Fest when it was in Memphis, and we did a panel on Christian nationalism, and that was cool because we got to give it was very ecumenical. We had a sort of more Wesleyan Methodist presentation, and then a Catholic, and then a Reformed, and then the Church of Christ, and I kind of moderated the whole thing, and it was really good. But that was the exception to the rule. We don't always have great I kind of try my best as a Protestant to learn enough Catholicism to defend libertarianism from a Catholic worldview, but I'm by no means an expert enough on Thomism or Catholic dogma and doctrine to want to present myself as an expert or do heavy lifting in that regard. So I agree with you there. And let's see, $10 from AT Alien. Now that I think I saw in the comment you said I got that right. If anarchy isn't a destination but a direction, what does that direction actually look like in practice? What changes signal we're moving towards it rather than just destabilizing what already exists? That's a really thoughtful question. This is actually a good segue to something I want to say. So I'm going to answer your question, but in a long roundabout way. So I'm also going to blow my nose really quick because also, just like Fabian was sick, I'm also sick, and my meds are wearing off. So I'm going to mute quick to do that. Part of the issue with having 5 kids is that kids are germ factories. So, and I homeschool my kids, but all it takes is we have a church with a bunch of kids in it. So, this time of year is just miserable. Anyway, so this idea of like strategy and moving forward and philosophy and what is libertarianism? Are some libertarians selling out on principle? And I've said this a lot, and I'm going to say it again, that I understand that the non aggression principle is the foundation of libertarian legal theory and property theory. But I don't think the non aggression principle is like you can hold a principle as a value, but the libertarian ethos, right? If we're going to talk about what libertarianism is, there's like in Christian terms, there's the spirit of the law and the letter of the law. The letter of the law, when it comes to libertarianism, is the non-aggression principle and self-ownership, private property rights. But the spirit of libertarianism is not those things. The spirit of libertarianism is voluntarism, is social cooperation and peace. The reason I'm a libertarian and an anarchist, well, there's a lot of reasons. I'm persuaded by the legal theory. I'm persuaded by free market economics, but like I'm a Christian first and foremost. And as a Christian, I'm told to love my neighbor. As a Christian, I'm told to be a peacemaker. As a Christian, I am told to live peaceably with all of those around me insofar as it depends upon me. And the Bible describes, that God's order is one of 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 growth and collaboration and human flourishing, and that now the effects of the fall and sin seek to rob and kill and destroy these things, but that ultimately that like the the ethos of a Christian is one of flourishing and of peace and of social cooperation and uh, of virtue. And I think that libertarianism is that at its core too. It's the spirit of libertarianism. And I think what there's some people who are focused on the philosophy, and I think that's good, but I think Dave knows the philosophy, but also understands that there's more to life than just the letter of the law. And there's the spirit of the law, and there's the spirit of libertarianism. And he's like, hey, if the philosophy of libertarianism is leading you to a conclusion that kind of cuts against the spirit of libertarianism, check your premises. I think that we're getting something wrong. Dave to Zulu said, I cannot articulate to you the perfect answer as to like what the standard is, but I still see the problem. Now, I think maybe from a debate level, some of you thought that was a cop out. So this is like one of my first observations of the debate that I've noticed. I've watched several debate reviews. I've watched Jose's, I've watched half of Fabian's, I watched Zulu's stream where he was reading super chats, and so I kind of uh, I don't think that was like an exhaustive debate review on his part, but I got to kind of hear some of his postmortem. Uh, and I've just had some private conversations behind the scenes. And I think that some people think that Dave was not offering arguments and he showed up to the debate and like just sort of filibustered. And I don't agree with that, but I can maybe, if I'm being charitable, understand that to an extent if you expected that Dave was going to show up and present like a positive case to justify his positions. Although to be fair, if you like, it depends on like there's so many different ways to do debate, right? And one could make the argument that the negative position taker doesn't actually have to argue though a positive case. They only have to poke holes in the positive case. I mean, in the affirmative case, right? Like the person taking on the negative side of the resolution doesn't have to prove their worldview. They only need to disprove the person who is defending the resolution as it stands. Now, whether you think Dave's did that or not is your own subjective interpretation, right? Um, I think that for those of you who are in Zulu's camp or more sympathetic to that camp, and you look at the resolution and you're like, well, it says that you have to argue that it's libertarians must advocate that you must never violate the non-aggression principle. There's ways to take what Dave said where he's kind of saying that, like, well, like, I would do this, uh, even though I know it violates the non-aggression principle and it would be a criminal act and it would still be wrong, but I am saying you should do something wrong. And yeah, that seems like it's kind of a contradiction, but like, I don't think it is. And I think that you might ask how I resolve that tension, and that's a fair question, but it comes down to like, like life is complicated. Now, you might say that's not sufficient to win the debate, right? Like, I can kind of understand. I can like, let me give a little bit of pretext here. I did debate in high school. Uh, I had a 4-year high school speech and debate career. Um, could have gone to college and continued it, but decided not to because I took a different career path. Because people who do that usually are doing it to like become a lawyer or something else, and I wasn't going into that. But uh, so like there's parliamentary debate, there's Lincoln Douglas debate, there's public forum debate. There's of course like model UN. There's all sorts of stuff. Uh, so And in debate, when you go to like tournaments to do debates, you don't get to pick like the resolutions are picked for you ahead of time. And you don't get to pick what side you defend. You have to be prepared to defend the positive and the negative. A lot of tournaments, what they would do is you'd show up and they'd flip a coin and it would be like um basically like you would alternate rounds. And like this round I have to do the positive and the next round do the negative, or each round would be a flip, right? And like that would like, sometimes there were some resolutions that were just like you tried your hardest, but you just knew, well, man, I really hope I get the positive case here if I get like, if you get to like the final round, because you're like, man, my negative case is just not as strong as my positive case. But the point is, doing that kind of teaches you to learn to sort of like steel man the opposing view of an argument and to understand it. And I think that's a strength, but I think that like, and I don't know, I'm not trying to like bloviate myself, but like I think sometimes people take me the wrong way, and like I'm able to actually really easily put myself in the position and the mindset of the person I'm talking to and like follow their arguments and logic, and I can like understand it. I might not like privately agree with it. I might be able to find holes in it, but I can very easily, I think it's a strength of mine, like see, oh, I see what you're doing. You're connecting this dot to this dot to this dot. So like I can understand people who think that Dave lost that debate. Like I think the consensus I've seen is that people think that Zulu didn't like perform as well as he could have, but that just on the substance he won because like Dave just didn't present a strong enough case or counter enough things or whatnot. Again, I think part of that is where you land on the issue. Part of that is going to be uh, just how you approach the debate, right? Uh, I always kind of approach debate more on technical terms, like, uh, and part of it is following flow, but part of it is also knowing where the burden of proof lies. And so, like, it is actually harder sometimes in debate to defend the affirmative. It's sometimes easier when you're the negative case to just be like, I don't have to even prove I'm right. All I gotta do is prove that they're wrong. And I think that there's a lot of people who can very reasonably say that they think that Dave proved Zulu wrong or just wasn't able to poke enough holes in Zulu's rhetoric and argumentation that like they're satisfied with that answer. They're satisfied that Dave said this is complicated and we don't have to have the perfect answers for every problem that comes up in our legal theory or in our philosophy, that sometimes there are just edge cases in life that like this is why we have courts and uh uh judges before trials before our peers and stuff, and juries and things like that, to like, you know, uh, kind of solve these things on a case by case basis. And sometimes it's going to be tough, and people might make the wrong choice, or it might seem kind of arbitrary. And like, I got to be honest, like, I think I'm kind of persuaded by that to a point. Now, I think it's good to kind of like, I think Zulu and his camp, where their strength is they kind of know. Well, they kind of feel like they're not satisfied with not having a crystal clear answer, so they wanna, like, interrogate that and find the answer, and I think that's good. Like, if you can advance philosophy by working on these edge cases and these things that previously people thought there's no good solution to, and you find solutions or you get closer to a solution, that's good, and I think we should, like, there's nothing wrong with that. I think that's a good thing to do. Uh, but to connect this to the question then, AT Alien 75 asked, uh, or 715 asked, like, is it like what does it look like in practice? What changes signal we're moving towards anarchy and not just destabilizing? I think it's like that's why I pointed to it's not just the philosophy, it's the virtues, it's the spirit of libertarianism. And if you see a society that it feels like people are, even if there's like still problems with people's philosophy and problems with the law, but it feels like you're moving towards a direction where the fruits of peace and social cooperation, and voluntarism and human flourishing are starting to show. Like those are markers you can use to kind of help gauge that you're going uh in the right direction, because like those might even crop up before other things necessarily present themselves. So, but the truth is, like, uh, I agree with Dave. Also, we're like we don't have anarcho capitalism. We've never had anarcho capitalism. So, like, we are kind of like having to venture out into uncharted territory. So, like, we're gonna have to do our best to try to like gauge that. But I think what you're getting at is sort of something I resonate with, which is kind of having that humility, intellectual humility, epistemic humility to be like, I'm very much convinced of anarcho capitalism, but I don't have this like, well, I don't have like a faith in it or like a confidence that rises to the level that I have confidence in other things. And I also just know how, like, complicated society is, and I know that, like, you can try to implement libertarian things and they can backfire and make things worse. And I feel like there's libertarian theory, and then there's, like, trying to, like, operate in the real world, and I feel like, uh, something that, my friend Matthew Bella said once when we were actually on a stream with Dave years ago was that, and I think it's kind of clumsy, but I get what he means, is that like maybe we need like a do no harm principle in kind of libertarian theory and practice, because like it's sort of like, listen, I obviously want to privatize welfare. I want to privatize social security. But if I'm like, well, I'm going to privatize social security and push that button, and now a bunch of like people who stake their entire retirement on like the system that they were raised in and put money into, and now they're just kind of like screwed, right? uh that is, I think, an example of advocating for libertarianism by the letter of the law but not by the spirit of the law, right? And so, it's like I think you need both. You need to know the philosophy and the policy, but then you also kind of have to remember that like these things are in service to ends, right? Like if libertarianism did not produce voluntarism and social cooperation and peace, then I don't know that I would like, it's probably a both and, right? Like rational, logical, coherent philosophical systems should produce good fruit. And I think that's Dave's entire point, though, is that like, hold on, if you start seeing bad fruit, like maybe don't abandon libertarianism, but maybe like, maybe you've made some miscalculation somewhere in how you're defining libertarianism. And I think Zulu kind of agrees in his own way, because he says, if you do a reductio ad absurdum and it leads to an absurd conclusion, then he would say like you should check your premises, and then if not, then try to solve the problem. If you've checked your premises and your premises are true. All right. I see a couple more super chats. I'm going to I'll read them in a minute. Uh, as I said, for those of you who are just tuning in, I am sick, so you'll have to bear with me as I pause to blow my nose every couple minutes because it's kind of hard to talk while you're really congested. I want to speak to um, the debate resolution a little bit. Sorry, my wife's texting me a joke. Um, so my wife trolls me sometimes while I'm streaming. So I want to speak to the debate format and resolution and how we handled things, uh, without giving away like literally like every exact like text conversation that happened behind the scenes. But like we had a little bit of trouble nailing down a resolution. Uh, Zulu wanted like a more technical one, and then Dave wanted one that was simpler, and then we kind of like ended up with one that I feel like none of us were satisfied with, but that is kind of how it goes sometimes with these things. And it was like this compound uh resolution. Um, but beyond that, then we and like the start time was kind of hard. Like Dave and I are both East Coast and like we're busy with families. It's a busy time of year. We have stuff going on, and it was kind of like we wanted to do it as soon as possible. We didn't want to put it off like another month or another couple weeks. So it was kind of like we found a day where Dave and I were free and we could do it, but the earliest we could do it was 8 o'clock. And I was like, you know, Zulu, I can't find any time where we can do it earlier. So like, what do you want me to do? Like, I wasn't like telling Zulu, like if Zulu had said I can't do it, I would have been like, well, then we'll wait until January or something, and I'll see if I can't get me and Dave on at a time that's earlier in the day. But like, it's one of the things where it's like he'd already agreed to do it, so it's like let's do it now while like we're capitalizing on the moment and not wait another week or two or month. So that's what went into that. And then as far as debate format, uh we all agreed to opening statements and then just open debate. And, kind of the reason for that was because this felt like a kind of topic where, like, because, like, if you watch the debate I moderated between Dan and Zulu on if Dave Smith is a force for good in the movement or something like that. I forget the exact resolution. But that one I did more of a structured debate. I did, opening statement, we did rebuttals, and then we did uh, like cross X, but like it was like each person asking the other questions, and I did try to uh moderate that a little bit. You know, one could argue that this debate, like, it could have gone either way. It might have fared better if we had done more structured, timed speaking, but I've watched Zulu debate and I've watched Dave debate, and I know that, like, I'm not trying to be I wanna be clear here. I'm not trying to put all the blame on Zulu, because I will point out some things I think I could have done better. But my thought process going in was that I've seen Zulu do debates, and I know they don't all have to be blood sports when you do the open debate format. But I was like, I've seen Zulu interrupt people. I've seen Zulu hold people to account to say, nope, you didn't answer my question, or to say, like, hold on, no, you're going down a road that doesn't make sense. And, I've seen Dave do that. And I was like, there's always a risk in a debate if you do like the really timed and structured ones where a lot gets said, but there's not actually a lot of interaction. And I get frustrated in debates when that happens, when you feel like one side's asking a question that the other one isn't answering. And I thought the open debate format was the best way. And they both agreed with me. Like, no, neither of them said, hold on, no, we need to do timed and all this stuff. That, like, this was a good way to approach it. This way that, like, uh, rather than being like really bound by certain time restrictions and rules, it's just more free flow. And like, as someone says something, they can interrupt them. And I was like, and my job will be like, if there's a lot of crosstalk and it's just like they get to a point where they're just both yelling at each other and neither one's shutting up, then it's like I'll mute you both and I'll do like a hard stop, right? Or if um, now I did also say if one person's dominating too much, I'll try to step in, but it's very hard on the fly to kind of like be listening to the flow and to know when an interruption is proper and when it isn't, because like you don't know what the person is going to say till they're like mid sentence saying it, right? And so there was times where Dave interrupted Zulu and I was like, well, he's interrupting him because he thinks Zulu isn't answering a question. And I wanted to allow both of them that opportunity to do so. Like there were times where I thought Dave wasn't answering a question Zulu made or responding to certain points Zulu made, and it felt like Zulu wasn't uh like coming in and saying anything, and then I would try to interrupt, but then I couldn't even get a word in. And maybe I should have muted people or something, but I was trying to like it's tough as a moderator to be like there's kind of this risk reward dynamic where like if I exercise as the host, like I try to interrupt and Zulu kept talking or Dave kept talking and now I mute them both. Like that can just feel a little off-putting to the audience and to the debaters. And so, it was kind of like, you just make judgment calls there. There was time though, like early on where like Zulu was trying to answer a question, and I could tell that like, uh, Zulu had barely started to get like 2 or 3 words out, and Dave interrupted him, and I stopped him there. But then there was other times where I felt like it wasn't that egregious. Um, as the debate waned on, I could tell, okay, Dave's talking a lot more than Zulu, and uh, I didn't know if it was like my like what was I supposed like. It's tough because like Dave's making points, right? And he does take a long time to make a point, and it's like, well, I could interrupt him and say, Dave, make your point faster. But then it's like now I've interrupted him, and he's going to lose his point, and that might make it take longer. And so I'm then hoping that like Zulu will come in and then he can go in a long monologue. But like Zulu was like very quick and to the point with his things. And then there were certain things he was leaving all kind of like on the table. And I thought, and maybe this was wrong of me, right? But in the moment, I was like, well, maybe like Dave seems to be dismissing a couple of arguments that Zulu's made that I'm familiar with because I've had a lot of conversations with him. So maybe I can like, steelman them and represent them to Dave and see if he'll chew on them more or give or like I can say something that maybe will give Zulu a piggyback. But that never seemed to kind of work out. Now what happened was the couple times I did that to Zulu, then Dave would then piggyback off what I said. And so then like in hindsight looking back, I inadvertently exacerbated the problem of like giving Dave even more uh speaking time over to Zulu. So like that's one of those things where like I think my intentions were good and I was trying to like to help and be fair, but it ended up looking a little bit imbalanced. I did try to at times like reformulate Zulu's points though to Dave, and I tried to defend a couple of them. Like I thought like Zulu didn't talk about this as much as I thought he might, because we've talked about this before. Sorry, I bumped my camera there. Um that like his concern about this whole like I don't know what the standard is, uh but like we should just like if so if someone is committing an aggression in pursuit of like something that they value as being good, right? And then you say, well, actually that can't be true in like every single situation, and there has to be some kind of limiting principle, but it's kind of hard to value these things and we don't necessarily know like where exactly the line is. Then like Zulu's kind of one of his points to that is like, well, this is why philosophy matters, because you should be kind of like trying to put the work in to think about these things. And also like that will help you to think about, how do I avoid getting myself into these situations where there's these fudgy edge cases and I might be tempted to violate the nap. On the flip side, it's like if we say, well, there's just times you can violate the nap when it's really messy, are you creating circumstances where people are just going to be intellectually lazy and not try to prevention better than cure? Are they going to just kind of like throw that to the wayside? So I tried to use like peaceful parenting as a sort of comparison, because that's kind of the argument from peaceful parenting. And I was like, Dave, like, sure, I kind of agree with you that, like, based on intuition and common sense, there are these edge cases, but like, can you not also get that, like, Zulu's point is that, like, there's a danger here of, like, it's not just like a throwaway thing of like, well, yeah, it's obviously better if, like, obviously, I'm not saying, and I don't think Zulu's saying, you can prevent every bad thing from happening, right? But just that, like, you don't want to accidentally create the sort of like nesting grounds for intellectual laziness, right? Or people not trying to be proactive to take personal responsibility. um, so is there anything else I want to say on the debate format and style? And I mean, I think there are I think I definitely towards the end when we were just doing super chats and whatnot, I think I probably jumped in more on those, which I didn't think that was really a big deal. I think some people maybe just that left them with a bad taste in their mouth, maybe because they thought I intervened too much earlier on too. But like, uh, yeah, I don't know. It's one of those things where it's like, I don't know that a perfect, like, no one's perfectly moderate, and like, there weren't a lot of, like, here's the thing, if there had been a lot of super chats to Dave about, like, challenging his immigration position, which I think there was only, from my memory, 1, and, but if there had been a lot more challenging Dave in ways where, like, they're the challenges that I agree with, I probably would have pressed Dave on those more, but there weren't that many. And it just, like, a lot of the ones that were given were more challenging towards Zulu, and then they were ones where I'm at least kinda sympathetic to them, or I felt like, I think my biggest thing was that I felt like Zulu was misunderstanding, because I just felt like, and I still have this frustration where I feel like people wanna, like, if Dave is saying he has to go before a judge, he's admitting it's a criminal act. So he's clearly saying the non-aggression principle still applies. Now you might say that creates a contradiction if he says you should violate the NAP, and then we can talk about that, but that doesn't mean that like, what the worst you can accuse him of is having a contradiction. You can't accuse him of saying the NAP doesn't apply when he's saying the NAP does apply because you would be a criminal and you'd have to, like, pay restitution or go before a judge. So, I was really trying to, like, get that, because that's kind of my position too, and I think I might have, stepped in a little bit too hard there, uh, but I'm not a completely unbiased moderator, but it is what it is, I guess. If you felt like that was too much, and it felt like a 2v1 at some points, then I guess I apologize for that. But I think it was kind of a, I guess my perspective is, I think it was a bit of a perfect storm of, uh, like, I stepped in more after the super chats were being read, which I don't think is that unusual for the debates I've watched. Uh, and I think Zulu wasn't aggressive enough. And, like, there's probably, like, things that if I moderate more debates, I'll learn to do it better, and I'll get a better intuition about when to interject and when not to. So, like, I'm not saying I, like, did a perfect job and no one can't, like, I think if anyone's humble when they're new to doing things, and I'm not like someone who has years of experience moderating debates. I've done a lot of debates, but I think up until like this, I think I moderated exactly uh one debate that was really like a real debate, and it was between Jeremiah Harding and Scott Skeller or Shell. I forget Scott's last name. Hold on, I have his. We were actually just messaging each other, so I can look it up. although you guys probably don't care too much. Although I do want you to know who I'm referring to because he's been like on Tom Woods' show and stuff. Where is it at? I feel like I'm just passing over it and not seeing it, which is really frustrating to me. No, no. Anyway, I still can't find it. That's really frustrating. But it was between Scott and Jeremiah, and it was on Javier Milei, and that was like I think it was still a friendly enough debate, but that was more of a contentious debate where there was really strong disagreements being made, and so that was like I think that's the only debate I can remember I ever moderated where like there's anything even slightly comparable to like this debate. I've moderated a couple in-house LCI debates that were kind of like not super serious. Like they were like mock debates of sorts that were really just roundtables and panels. So yeah, like anytime you're like new to doing something, like you're gonna be able to, if you humble, like learn things and be like, oh, I could have done this better. I could have done that better. And I'm still kind of like going back and re-listening to the debate. And if I moderate more debates in the future, I think I'll do better in the future. But I don't think I like. I mean, if people think I did like a horrible, abysmal job, I mean, like I guess I can just respectfully think I think that's a little bit dramatic. All right, let's do some more super chats here. Um, Elliot 2922 for $10. Appreciate that. As a Christian, and what do you ground morality? Because right now I ground morality in logic. I'm new as a Christian, so I'm curious about your view. All truth is God's truth. So of course we can ground morality in logic as well. I'm not one of these Christians who thinks that like I think I believe in natural law. I'd recommend if you haven't, and not just for this question, but just in general. It's a really good first, like as a new Christian, I recommend everyone read this book, which is Mere Christianity by C.S. Lewis. It does a really good job at kind of explaining where Christians derive our ethics and our morality from, and it connects it to how we ground it in both the Bible and in logic, and why there's no contradiction there. So, uh, I hope that helps you. I should probably, like I am more of a I am a political commentator who has studied a lot of theology and some philosophy. Although I have not spent nearly as much time in philosophy as like Zulu and his camp has. I've spent more time in theology. I've thought about like doing some kind of like either a podcast or like writing some kind of essay or something on like Christian ethics to kind of challenge like the Andrew Wilsons and others who argue for what Christian ethics are. But I haven't done that yet. It might be something I look into doing in the next year. But I'm kind of writing another book right now, so my my writing time is going to be split a few different ways. Uh, Chucking Money for $5 said, so libertarianism in practice shouldn't cause hardship. Won't the system we have collapse on its own and cause way more horrific harm? Yeah, I'm not saying it won't cause hardship, right? Uh, so like, there's two things there. Libertarianism, if it was fully implemented, doesn't mean it prevents hardship. It just means that it's going to minimize it to the extent that possible. Moving from the current legal order to a more libertarian one is tough. And I think that the standard isn't that it won't cause any hardship, but you have to mitigate that somehow, because if it causes too much hardship, you're going to have a sort of like destabilizing effect that not only hurts people, but even if like you were like selfish and you're like, I don't care if it hurts people. Well, if you hurt those people, guess what? They're going to blame the free market and they're going to lobby for a state again. So you kind of have a rational interest to decentralize and privatize and move towards a libertarian order and free market in a way that doesn't cause that kind of backlash, I think, if that makes sense. All right. caught up on super chats for now. Uh, so what else do I want to say regarding the debate? I said some of this stuff in the um oh, is this the actual Libertarian Party? If so, hello, and thank you guys for your support. You guys retweet our content a lot. Um, here's something I want to say, since the Libertarian Party either was or wasn't watching, depending on if they were real or not, the real account. Uh, Something that I've been thinking about before the debate, and I continue to still think about after the debate, is like that's why I kind of phrased the debate this way. Like, what is a libertarian? And it feels like Zulu's camp is very content in just saying that uh, libertarianism equals anarchism, and then the discussion ends. And it just keeps putting me in this position, even though I'm the host of the Biblical Anarchy podcast, and I literally I have this hoodie and I have a No King but Christ hoodie, and other shirts and merchandise that first of all, like if I'm not an anarchist, then I don't know what makes one an anarchist uh, for the Zulu crowd. But I'm very to the point about being an anarchist to people. And I think anarchism is the consistent application of the non-aggression principle, and that uh, libertarianism taking to its complete conclusion is anarchism. But minarchists still believe in the non-aggression principle. And I don't think that Zulu's camp is really contending with that. Like for me, I mean, listen, there's people who call themselves minarchists who are probably not minarchists in the truest sense, because they're probably more like constitutionalists or just like conservatives. But imagine going to Ayn Rand and calling her a statist, right? Like, was Ayn Rand I know Ayn Rand was an anarchist, but was she a statist? Because she advocated for a government that doesn't tax and that was basically voluntarily formed. So, this isn't about philosophy. This is about language. It's about terms and what they mean. And you can define libertarianism in a way that basically means no one but an anarchist is a libertarian. But, you know, I think there's something to be said about people who think the non-aggression principle is true, but are having less of a philosophical hangup and more of a sociological and economic hangup, where they can't conceive of a privately arranged, decentralized legal order where property rights and the non-aggression principle are upheld through market means and not by a state. So, and you can say to someone who, is a minarchist or to an objectivist that hey, like you're being inconsistent. And sure, I think they're being inconsistent, but guess what they're being inconsistent in? They're being inconsistent in their application of the NAP. Whereas the rest of the world is kind of like they're being consistent in their rejection of the NAP, right? So I think we at least have to contend that there's kind of a difference there, right? There's a difference between someone who's like, I believe in the NAP and fails to adhere to it consistently and to accept anarchism. Here's the truth. A lot of minarchists you talk to will even say, well, I'm like an anarchist at heart, but I just don't think that it's practical. I don't think we can have a stateless society. And so the best we could probably achieve is minarchy. And so then it's like, well, okay, are we really disagreeing over philosophy, or are we disagreeing over probability and human psychology and the you know economics of the matter, right? Uh, Now I'm persuaded that the truth of these things does not debunk uh, anarcho-capitalism as being plausible and viable. Uh, it does depend upon a culture of people who uphold the nap, but like so does minarchism, right? Like to keep a minarchist state voluntary and minarchist, you'd have to have a bunch of people who believed in that. So I think the minarchist has a problem more of like they don't want to take that leap of faith. And I think we should push them on that, but like we should push them on that to kind of be like, hey, you should just like take that leap of faith and like make the argumentations. But like when you're arguing with a minarchist, it's not like you have to like they already if they're a good minarchist, they all like tell me Ayn Rand did not believe in the non-aggression principle. I mean, she didn't call it that, but like that was basically the core of her philosophy. And she just also had that inconsistency that like Mises had and others had, where they're just like, oh, but you can't uphold like, they have the air of like their ignorance or their lack of confidence in the ability of anarchy to uphold the nap. I'm like I just don't like again, I'm not making a philosophical argument here. I'm saying that like I have to tell someone that like sorry, you're not in the club, you're not a libertarian because like you agree with the nap. And like you could actually say that sometimes the men I said this on a previous stream, but like sometimes the minarchists will try to turn the table and they'll be like, well, you anarchists don't care about the nap because you don't want to monopolize the nap on society. You want to leave it open to competition and people can disobey the nap. And so, like, uh, uh, but whatever, like, a minarchist is saying, like, the worst I can say about a minarchist is that they are inconsistently following the non aggression principle, but they want to follow it. The normie statist is just consistent in saying, I reject the non aggression principle. So I don't know. Like, you can make the philosophical argument all you want, but like life, and this is where I'm more of a Dave Smithian. And like, I love you Zulu types. Like, I see you guys in the comments. I see Casimir is here. I don't know who else is here. I saw there were some other Zulu people who I don't recognize your usernames. Maybe we interact on Discord. Listen, like we don't agree on everything, but like I feel like I'm trying to be really fair and like platform you guys and push for other people to platform you guys and to like not gatekeep you out of the movement. And I'm going to keep doing that. Like, I just had Fabian on the last stream. That was a really great conversation. Like every time I have one of you guys on, even where we disagree, it's a great conversation. I don't have anything like super negative to say other than just that like uh not everything in life is is philosophy. Now, philosophy is really important. I think religion is really important. Uh, but like, there's also just human relationships and emotions, right? And social constructions and conventions and I'm not saying we should like submit philosophy to whim or to emotion or to psychology, but like words and labels have philosophical usage and then they have like normal usage. And you can argue for like libertarians to be consistent must be anarchists, but it's I don't see what is being gained. I don't see how we're having more conversations. I don't see how we're persuading people by just saying that like only talking about things in the realm of pure philosophy 100% of the time. So, like, it's wrong to throw listen, I get it. Like I said this to Dan Smots, like I've been streaming now for like 5 hours straight, actually going on 6 hours. So I said this like 6 hours ago to Dan, because Dan was like, and I love Dan. He was maybe being like a little tongue in cheek and a little dismissive, where he was like, I don't get the point of like the Zulu people and why you're interacting with them and why we did this debate. And I was like, well, Dan, the reason why they are the way they are to some extent, and I'm very sympathetic to this, is that there are libertarians or self professed libertarians who literally did sell out, who literally did just say principles don't matter, and who literally talk down on those who theorize and who do theory and act like it's useless. And I'm like, well, no, we need that, right? Like, so like, it's not that I think that we don't have a role for philosophy. Uh, I wouldn't do what I do if I thought that was true. Uh, but like, you got to pair that philosophy with also like other things to help make the philosophy understood by people and accepted by people, and uh and also to like just like operate in the world and function in the world, and like to if we're at the point where like the libertarian party has to purge everyone who's not an anarchist, then like prepare, like, listen, let me tell you from someone, the perspective of someone who spent years trying to help a coalition of the party gatekeep and kick out other people from the party, that like you have no idea what you're in for. You have no idea what you're in for if you're going to fight this fight. It's a waste of time. Like, make the arguments, but just like let libertarianism be the broad tent uh umbrella term that covers minarchists and anarchists. And then guess what? Then we have the minarchists right where we want them, and we say, hey, fellow libertarian, being rather inconsistent there with our principles. Let's help us be more consistent with our principles. And I'm not saying that there aren't times to gatekeep, but it's just like we're kind of stuck in this binary of zero gatekeeping or like over the top, like scorched earth gatekeeping. And like we can find a middle ground here, guys. All right. Let me read some more chats here. Uh, Bria Stambaugh 2405 for $5. What are the odds and what is the timeline, do you think, of a libertarian world coming into existence? Do you think Zulu and Dave play a big part? Yes. I mean, to the last part, yes. I The reason I wanted this debate to happen and this conversation to happen is because it's like, as I said at the beginning, like they're both pointing to a problem that like it's kind of like, you know, yeah, like they both see different problems, and I see both the problems they see. And I think that getting the movement to talk about both of the problems they see is going to put us in the best position to get our philosophy right, but to also get our strategy right, and to get our praxis right, to get the way that we treat one another right, to get the way that we uh, resolve disputes within the community right, to get the way that we gatekeep right. And that's kind of like, these are all the prerequisites for a libertarian world, or at least a more libertarian world coming into existence. I don't know what the odds are. I think it's kind of hard to put a number to it. Uh, like I was saying earlier, like I don't even know if we can get back to the Constitution. I'd settle for getting back to like the government and the society we had like in the 90s under Bill Clinton. But like compared to now, that feels like, a huge step in the right direction. I never want to make perfect the enemy of good, right? And improving. I agree. Fabian. One of the things that Fabian said in the last stream that I really agreed with is that, like, I'm one of these ANCAP incrementalists, right? And it's like, yeah, like that's how I feel. Or you could say ANCAP gradualism, maybe. But uh, like the goal and the North Star is anarcho-capitalism. But, like, even if we fail and, like, we don't quite get there, then, like, listen, all you Zulu and caps in the comments, like, I mean, you can't actually do this, right? But, like, look me in the eye, get in the comment section and tell me that you wouldn't rather live in a minarchist state than the government we currently have, and that wouldn't be, like, a huge dramatic improvement. I mean, heck, I think a minarchist state is almost a prerequisite, or at least it would be a useful prerequisite to getting to anarchy, because like you got to get the government small enough to where then you can start like convincing people to be like, hey, we're going to go, you know, like I've heard minarchists say this. Minarchists are like, hey, let's get it down to minarchy, and then let's give the anarchists like a bunch of places to experiment in anarchy, and let's see if that works. Like again, I think you guys are kind of missing the letter of the law and the spirit of the law thing. There's a lot of minarchists who are not like, you know, they're not like statists by some like huge devotion to the state or love for aggression, but they're more like, you know, we're skeptical, but like, hey, like, let's get to monarchy and then let's see if we can go to that next step. But like, whatever the odds are, we're worsening them by making enemies where we shouldn't. And that goes both ways. Like, I think the Dave and Mises caucus camp, it's not like they're blameless to have occasionally like done some friendly fire in the movement. Like I feel like listen, I'm probably always in this position because like I am a what's the term here? I'm a it'll come to me. I'm a pathological like middle child, right? Like I was a middle child, and like I just always act out that like middle child peacekeeping role, and like not peacekeeping, like trying to like I don't want to like whitewash the differences, but it's like I want to have true reconciliation that comes from having hard conversations, which means that like I'm gonna like I'm just always gonna be putting myself in the middle of people who are fighting and trying to like see if I can help them get more on the same page. So thank you for that, Bria Stanball. Um, I'll go for like 5 more minutes, and then I'm probably going to go because I'm going to fall asleep if I stay awake much longer. But I will read the rest of the super chats and then give a final call. Also, and I appreciate the super chats, guys. Also, just to remind you all of our end of the year fundraiser. If you want to go to libertarianchristians.com/donate, every dollar you donate in December gets matched dollar for dollar, and we really appreciate that. This is what we do here at LCI. We try to embody the Christian values, right? And one of those Christian values is peacemaking. And you know, I think I made the joke on Twitter the other day. It's like I am going to end libertarian infighting or die trying, and maybe I'll die trying. But I don't know. I think it's a noble goal to devote part of my mission to. $5 from Saint Seneca 6. Got here late, but I think I unfairly maligned you as a moderator. You do great work for Christians and libertarians. I also donated to LCI also. God bless. Well, I appreciate that. And like, listen, like I saw a lot of the criticisms that came out about my moderation, and it's like I wanted to like, I don't know, like I wanted to defend myself to the extent that I felt like people maybe like maybe I didn't say this earlier clearly, but like maybe people were expecting a more moderated, like structured debate, and that they're not as used to the open debate format. Then maybe they felt like because like and listen, even Zulu said this in his review that like he thought that maybe at times I was like made some mistakes, but that also that like I think in his own words, he said a hefty share of the blame falls on me for not being more aggressive. Because that's kind of what that debate format kind of requires of you is to be aggressive. And I've seen Zulu be aggressive in different formats. You know, I think Jose or someone said that like this should have been more of a timed like you get 5 minutes and you get 5 minutes and you get maybe in hindsight maybe, but you know, that's one of those things too, where it could just get like really ticky tacky to like always be like, you know, holding people to those time limits. And so this is just one of those things where like you can always second guess everything. But I also like, I want to acknowledge that like I'm not saying that like I'm not holding myself above criticism or to say I can't improve on something that I don't have. I have a lot of experience doing debates, but not moderating them. So I feel like I did an okay job, but like, yeah, sure. I'll learn from this. Like anyone should learn from anything and just always, we should always be trying to improve. So thank you for that. I appreciate it. Conrail 2020 for $10. Thank you very much, Conrail. I just want to state for anyone misunderstanding my comments in the chat, my criticisms of how Dave treats libertarians that don't agree with him. Sorry, I'm going to be misreading this. I want to state for anyone misunderstanding my comments in the chat, my criticisms of how Dave treats libertarians that don't agree with him, that I am on the side of Zulu and his followers. Okay. Well, I'm glad I was able to state that for you. Um, so yeah, I mean, like, I think people have even assumed that like that debate got 2-on-1 and that was because like I was on Dave's side. But like, I don't know. Like, I don't think I felt like I could moderate this because I'm not on a side here. Like, there are particular issues in the micro where I lean more in one direction, but like I agree with Zulu more on immigration than I agree with Dave. But like I agree with Dave more on the public property argument than I do Zulu. But I agree with Zulu more when it comes to like the like I think there is something to like I think Dave called it a cop out, but I like what Zulu does with the reductios to try to find ways to like reconcile them to the nap. But I think he's right to do that. And I think Dave's right to point out that like it goes both ways. And I don't know, like I feel like there's just so much of this where like there's just some people are just team Zulu and some people are just team Dave and they were just always going to like pick a side and trash talk the other, which is fine. Like that happens. Um, but oh, Conrail said, I am not on the side of Zulu and his followers." Okay. I didn't misread that, did I? That I am on the okay, so you meant to say I'm not on the side of Zulu and his followers. But even then, either way, it's like I'm I am on Zulu's side and I'm on Dave's side. Like Dave introduced me to these ideas and like maybe I'm fanboying a bit. Maybe you could say I'm being too loyal to him because he's my friend, but no, like I don't know. The dude takes arrows for us. He goes on big stages. He's been heroic in his efforts to call out what's going on in Israel and Gaza and Ukraine and Russia and like popular helping Scott Horton and the Libertarian Institute and antiwar.com and Dave DeCamp to rise in popularity and whatnot. So like I don't know, like he just does so many good things and he's like also like I've hung out with the guy in real life. So like of course like I like him. He's a father. Just a good person. Uh who's flawed like any of us are. But of course I also like I'm on Zulu's side because like the dude's promoting anarcho-capitalism. The dude has a channel that's like 5 times bigger than mine and like I think I do okay, but he's doing really good and he's super young and I'm like, dude, like that's so cool that like there's like a Zoomer and Cap who's got a big following, who's getting a bunch of other young people to embrace the philosophy and like uh does it in a way that like engages in humor and stuff that I appreciate and whatnot. So like I'm on the side of God and on the side of truth, on the side of liberty, and like I don't pick sides based on disagreements. Like we're all in the same direction. Again, I'm gonna end on this. Like it or not, like everyone in this chat, we're on the same train. Like you might not want to be in the same train with Dave Smith, or you might not want to be in the same train as Liquid Zulu or his followers, but like guess what? Like tough. We're we're all on the same train. We're part of the same movement. And like in a colloquial and very human way, we believe in the same things. We have disagreements like any group of people do, right? And that's good. And we should talk those things out. But like, if we're gonna have any success, like I care about being consistent, but I also care about like making freedom happen in the real world and keeping my family free and safe, uh, and educating people on these things. And so, like Dave and Zulu both in their own different ways and in their own different lanes work to make that happen. So like, don't if you expect me to be like on one team or the other, I mean, I'm I'm going to be not sorry to disappoint you on that. If you expect me to like view Dave Smith as some cancer on the movement, I'm going to think that's silly, and I'm going to laugh at it, and I'm gonna say why I think that's wrong. But if you just dismiss Zulu as like some, just calling him autistic and young and all that, then like I also think that's wrong as well because I think Zulu brings a lot to the table and he's very intelligent. So uh so yeah. Last super chat. Halsey on Draconis 7437 side. I'm on nobody's side because nobody is on my side. Little orcs. Uh Good Lord of the Rings reference. That's the tree, right? What's his name? I forget his name. Been so long since I read that. Uh I know I sometimes call him Optimus Prime because in the movie he's voiced by Optimus, the guy who does Optimus Prime. Yeah. No, it's funny. Um, yeah, good quote. All right, guys, I'm exhausted, but this has been a lot of fun. I hope that the things I said made sense. Um, agree, disagree, whatever. Appreciate all of you for tuning in, for watching. If you guys want to give this a thumbs up, would appreciate it. 'Cause the more these videos get the likes, the more they're promoted in the algorithm. I will be. I think tomorrow I'm doing a short stream or spaces. Uh, with I'm blanking on his name. Matthew uh Sands from the Nation of Sanity Project. That one's going to be, by the way, all of you part of, if you guys are still listening, all you part of the problem Discord people will get a joke, laugh out of this. We're going to be tackling the donut homestead problem. So that'll be a lot of fun. I'll, of course, be back here again Monday, uh, the 15th, for a normal green room. And then next Friday, the 19th, I will be on Are You Smarter Than a Politician, which I saw he was in the chat and um, uh, been big supporter of what we're doing here. And I appreciate Free and Amity and all of you. Uh, yeah, I'm going to hop off, spend a little bit of time with my wife before I go to sleep. Uh, if I don't, if any of you don't tune in again before it happens, Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. I'm going to be doing streams next week and then probably taking off for the rest of the year after that. But yeah, thanks everyone. Talk again soon.